We have a severe taxonomic problem in Upper Paleolithic archaeology. Over the last century, the Aurignacian stone tool industry has been stretched so thin that it is rapidly losing its intended meaning. This dilution was intentional. Historically, researchers actively assigned a biological identity, specifically early modern humans or Cro-Magnons, to these specific stone tools. They used the lithics as a proxy to track human migration across the globe. Archaeologist Ofer Bar Yosef pointed out the flaw in this approach. He observed that researchers were extending the definition of the Aurignacian far beyond its Western European origins, applying the label to remote Eurasian assemblages, simply to force the data to match human dispersal patterns. By prioritizing the search for human origins, the field abandoned the strict diagnostic criteria of the tools themselves. Assemblages that looked vaguely similar were grouped together under one umbrella. To resolve this, we have to strictly separate the question of who made the tools from the taxonomic classification of the tools. Treating a stone tool typology as identical to a biological species corrupts both the archaeological and the paleoanthropological records. The Shadow-Pannonian industry in Western Europe provides the clearest case study for why biological and lithic records cannot be blindly correlated. At the site of Grotte du Maine, excavators found Neanderthal teeth in the exact same layers as advanced Shadow-Pannonian bone ornaments. A closer look at the stratigraphy reveals a mechanical explanation. The later Shadow-Pannonian populations settled on top of older Mousterian deposits. When they dug post holes and hearths into the ground, they physically disturbed those lower layers. This vertical displacement pushed Mousterian artifacts, including isolated Neanderthal teeth, upward, redepositing them entirely within the newer Shadow-Pannonian layer. We know these ornaments are not Neanderthal creations because no purely late Mousterian sites across Europe contain anything resembling them. A similar pattern appears at St. Césaire. The Neanderthal remains found there are likely a secondary burial, serving as a territorial marker during periods of intergroup conflict, rather than proof that Neanderthals independently invented Upper Paleolithic technologies. Until we find an intact, articulated Neanderthal burial in a clear Shadow-Pannonian context, isolated bone fragments in transitional strata do not prove they manufactured the accompanying lithics. The original, classical Aurignacian was defined as a rich, multi-material behavioral package, never as a single tool type. The strict lithic components include thick Aurignacian blades, distinct nosed scrapers, and end scrapers. The organic components are equally specific, featuring rich assemblages of ivory body ornaments, bone tools, and split-based points made from antler. Finally, the package contains the carinated scraper, a core for producing short Dufour bladelets. Over time, researchers stripped away strict requirements, dropping bone tools and nosed scrapers, reducing the definition to a single element. At its base, this core is just flint prepared so a specific strike produces a narrow bladelet. The complete multi-material package represents a distinct cultural footprint. The isolated carinated core is merely a functional solution to a mechanical problem. This reductive approach took hold because many archaeological environments, like open-air loess sites or the semi-arid Levant, have terrible organic preservation. Without surviving bone and antler tools, researchers in these regions were forced to rely entirely on stone tools for classification. This led to a critical diagnostic error. Archaeologists began to equate the mere presence of any carinated core with the presence of the Aurignacian culture itself. But a carinated core is a reduction sequence, not a cultural identity. It is a highly effective, repeatable strategy for obtaining narrow bladelets. That specific reduction strategy was utilized independently by numerous unrelated late Upper Paleolithic groups across Western Asia. Confusing a ubiquitous flint knapping technique with a specific cultural marker destroys both the geographical and chronological boundaries of the archaeological record. The Upper Paleolithic assemblages found in the Caucasus, specifically at Zudzwana Cave, provide a perfect test for this morphological fallacy. Radiometric dating places the layers at Zudzwana between 23,000 and 20,000 years before present, far outside the classical Aurignacian town window. Yet the lithic assemblage in this cave is heavily dominated by carinated cores used for bladelet production. If we look closely at the rest of the assemblage, we see a total absence of nosed scrapers, Aurignacian blades, and true Dufour bladelets. A second massive chronological outlier is the Kebaran site of Ain Gev I in the Levant, dated between 18,000 and 14,500 years ago. Early reports actually labeled the Ain Gev Ain Bisri Orianacoid solely because it contained carinated cores, even though the surrounding tools were completely different, fine-tuned microliths. Using the carinated core as a taxonomic proxy generates massive false positives, rendering the Aurignacian label functionally meaningless across vast swaths of Eurasia. To clean up the dataset, we have to adopt precise, non-cultural temporal terminology. The term Early Upper Paleolithic, or EUP, should be used strictly as a temporal bracket. It refers to the first 10 to 20 millennia following the Middle Paleolithic, devoid of any cultural assumptions. Initial Upper Paleolithic, or IUP, designates the specific entities that show the first clear operational shifts away from older Mousterian methods. The data increasingly shows that these initial Upper Paleolithic industries in southwestern Asia demonstrably predate the IUP in Europe. By strictly separating sheer time, initial technological shifts, and specific cultures like the Aurignacian, we establish a framework capable of mapping actual human history. Archaeologist Janusz Kozłowski provides a methodology for empirically proving continuous technological evolution using data from the Balkans. This chart correlates the stratigraphic sequences from Biocultural and Temnata caves, anchoring the lowest layers at dates older than 40,000 years ago. Moving up the right side column, it traces a continuous transition from the local Bioculturian industry directly into the typical Aurignacian. To prove this connection, Kozłowski moves beyond static lists of tool shapes. Instead, he tracks the chain operateur, the full step-by-step operational sequence of how the flint was reduced. This diagram shows lithic evidence from level C of the Temnata sequence. Cores 1 and 2 at the top are residual, strongly exhausted single-platform structures. Panning down, blades 3 through 6 represent the resulting blanks generated by that core, characterized by large, straight profiles. Tracing this exact sequence reveals how makers initially shaped the platform with a single blow, before extending the flaking face onto the nodule's narrower sides. By tracking this exact operational logic upward into the younger level B, we can see the makers developing divergent reduction strategies while maintaining the exact same foundational technique. The true fingerprint of a lithic industry is not the final shape of a discarded tool. It is the internalized cognitive process of reduction passed down between generations. The Aurignacian is a geographically bound ethno-linguistic footprint that emerged directly from local European initial Upper Paleolithic industries around 36,500 years ago. It cannot be defined by a single reduction strategy. Future classifications must rely on the presence of complete multi-material technological packages. Decoupling stone tools from biological species sharpens our ability to trace both distinct hominin histories and precise cultural adaptations. Rigorous methodology ensures that the archaeological record remains a set of hard facts, rather than a distorted mirror reflecting our own assumptions about human origins.